Hello again, guys, and welcome to this showcase for my new Fallout 4 mod, Anarchists Cookbook Volume 2. By now it should be pretty obvious what this mod series does, so let's jump right into it. In this volume I add 9 new explosives and thrown weapons, some with both grenade and mine variants. From left to right, you will see the emergency flare, the concussion grenade, the flashbang grenade, the acid grenade, the Splinter Bomb, the Bouncing Betty, otherwise known as the S-Mine, a thrown combat knife, the Gravitonium Grenade, also available as a mine, and the signal flare alarm. Let's jump right in and go test these out. First up we have the emergency flare. This comes in 2 variants, an instant and timed version. Each of these in turn comes with a shadow casting and no shadows version, created with users on slower PCs in mind. This is a support grenade, as it has no offensive power, and mechanically works very similar to the artillery flare. If we equip the instant version, we simply throw it like we would any other grenade, and it will light up the area you throw it to. You can see this version casts some pretty nice, intense shadows. It's animated too. You can see the fire there. It's also obviously great for lighting up dark interiors. There's also the timed version, which is even closer to the mechanics of the artillery flare. You throw it, and after a second or two it pops open. Next up we have the Concussion Grenade. This is a low damage, high impact weapon. You can see it has about half the damage of a normal grenade, but the stat you can't see is that it has a very high force. This means that it does very high limb damage to anything caught in its blast. It also has the possibility to knock enemies down, or at least heavily stagger them, perfect for crowd control or slowing down tougher enemies.
I'm gonna tear your fucking throat out! Ah!
If we go into VATS, you can see that the grenade crippled the limbs that were damaged by it. The next weapon is the Flashbang Grenade. This is a classic support weapon, so it's pretty self-explanatory. When it detonates, it disorients anyone caught in it. Mechanically, it has an effect very similar to the Mine Cloud syringe for the Syringer rifle. Enemies will lose track of you for a few seconds, and will have a hard time attacking you so long as you don't give away your position. You can see that the 2 enemies caught in the blast have lost track of me. So long as I don't move, I'll be fairly safe. But after a little while, oh, there they come again. You have to be careful with this one, because if you get caught in the blast too, you'll also be momentarily blinded. This next one is inspired by the Splinter Bomb from one of my favorite TV shows, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is a fairly gruesome weapon which rapidly petrifies living tissue, turning it to ash. Although you can't tell from the stats here, it does extremely high damage, about 500 points, which is offset by an extremely small hitbox and a rather expensive crafting cost, which we'll get to later.
Are you fucking kidding me?
As you can see, it's pretty gruesome. And there's a good example of how the tiny hitbox helps to offset the damage. Let's try something a little bigger. You can see it's almost powerful enough to kill a Deathclaw in one hit. However, between the small hitbox and the high cost, you won't be going into battle with a whole box full of these. It does get the job done. Here we have a weapon with some real-world inspiration, the Bouncing Betty, otherwise known as the S-Mine. Once triggered, it shoots up into the air about chest high and launches shrapnel over a wide area. This makes it a especially brutal method of crowd control. Just make sure you're not caught in the blast as well. Again, because of the way it works, you can't see the stats, but it does about 25% more damage than a frag mine over a larger area. Let's just place one here. Spawn some enemies. Sit back and watch the fireworks. In case that was too quick for you.
First mistake, last mistake.
Again, it's pretty brutal. This fun little device I've called the Gravitonium Grenade. Although not actually a weapon in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Gravity Puck was used to control a trace amount of the very rare element gravitonium, which could alter the gravitational field on objects around it. This comes in both a grenade and mine variant, and to be honest, this one's quite a bit of fun to play with. It does no damage, but it is a very good support weapon. We just spawn some enemies, throw the grenade, and everything caught in its field will get pulled into it. You do have to be careful though, because if you're too close to it, you'll get pulled into it too. And then here's just a quick demonstration of the mine variant. The next weapon up is the thrown combat knife. I had always wished throwing weapons were in this series, so I created one for this mod mostly as a challenge to myself. When you throw it, it'll get stuck in whatever it makes contact with, including enemies, and you can retrieve it for reuse. It's also considered a silent weapon, so you should be able to use it for sneaking. You can see here that the knife gets stuck in the tree and we can go pick it out. When you hit an enemy with the knife gets added to their inventory, so you can retrieve it from them when you loot the body afterwards. This weapon, much like the Splinter Bomb earlier, benefits greatly from the throwing arc you get from Demolition Expert 2. I call this the signal flare alarm. This is another piece of support equipment. When triggered, it launches a bright signal flare into the air, both showing you where enemies are approaching from and illuminating the area so you can target them. Usually, the flare will drift slowly towards the ground, increasing visibility as it does so.
Ain't personal.
Lastly, we have the acid grenade. As you'll see when we look at the crafting recipes, I describe this as the bile-filled acid sac of a McLrgHuge, tied off like a balloon. Again, because of the way it's calculated, you won't get a good readout of the actual damage output. However, after coating enemies in acid after bursting, it does continuous acid damage for a number of seconds.
You gotta be joking.
As usual, guys, I just want to close with how to actually get this equipment. Like most mods, the items can be crafted at the Chem Lab, unless you're using the Armor Keywords patch, in which case they'll be constructed at the Explosives Workbench. If we take a look at the recipes, I added some flavor text to each one to give you an idea of what they do, or tie them into the lore. I tried to give each one as logical and balanced a recipe as I could, scaling with their power and utility. I should note, you can't tell from the recipes, but the Gravitonium Grenade and mine recipes actually give you a batch of 3 at a time. As I said earlier, the Splinter Bomb has by far the most demanding requirements in terms of perks, as well as requiring some fairly rare ammo to craft. You can see with the signal flare alarm, as well as the emergency flares a moment ago, the No Shadows version is denoted by the small NS at the end of the name. Again, for users with less powerful PCs that seize up when there's a whole bunch of moving shadows on screen. That'll pretty much do it. Again, I want to thank you guys for checking out my mods. Links to the download page are below. Remember, I always like seeing your screenshots and videos using my mods, so send them over on the Nexus. As usual, I just want to close by reminding you that, most importantly, have fun.